Yeah, that's their first shot of saying what they're gonna fund at home.
Right, that's it, yeah, just.
Can you hear me?
It was introduced like a week ago. When I brought it.
Can you hear us?
Maybe somebody cares.
Yes, it just took me a minute to pull up my volume.
We can't hear you yet.
Oh, yeah.
That's even on.
Can you
her
hear
radar.
me?
So, well, it'll go through.
I mean, yeah, not that it matters. If you
It's
can.
got to.
We can't hear you. Hang on.
It doesn't matter if nobody can hear
No.
me.
Yes.
I'm not a participant, so it doesn't matter. Wait, is that Miss Dennison over there?
Yes. Hi.
It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
She came into Village Hall today.
I replaced my RN Rex water line pipes. And I went to see, do I get reimbursed because they're doing that project now?
Wow.
But we didn't come back. That's why I saw Jen.
It's worth an ask.
We got it.
Yeah, I got the thing out the survey.
I filled out the survey and I brought my piece of pipe that.
I was like, looked at it, and I'm like, inside.
Yeah.
Well, I've got galvanized pipe and the diameter is getting smaller, and I know it is.
Oh, yeah.
I signed up for this insurance for a few years. They can help me take up the street.
Yep.
Matter of time.
Hi to everyone else, but I see everyone else all the time. So, hi.
We see
you're
you right
normal
now.
to me. I see you.
They're not,
If we're
nothing-
normal,
they're
you
not-
got a
Yeah, you
problem.
got problems. Exaggeration.
Normal.
Normal-er.
There you go. There you go. All right, I think we're going to get as good as we're gonna get. So let's stand and do the pledge.
No.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so I heard from Kamran that he has a work commitment. Pete said he's going to be late. And those are the two items I have there. I did get an update from Chris. I was like, you know what? I haven't heard from him. Let me see where he's at. So let me just read off what he said. In terms of the update, we are still working toward having a revised full draft of the code by the end of December. This will include incorporation of comments of the phase 1 portion previously and a first draft of phase 2, which is everything else. But there will likely be some placeholders. As we develop content for phase 2, there may also be some questions that I will flag for the ZAC to hone in on. In terms of the overall schedule and responding to Marilyn's questions about the next public workshop, the plan has been to have a refined draft code by the end of February. I think it's best to have a public workshop at this point. This will give time for the ZAC to review the code in early 2025, provide comments, be sure to revise accordingly, and then send the ZAC for one last look before it goes public. I think we should put the full code out for public for a couple of weeks or so for the public to review. Although very well we will be interested, although we'll be very well interested in reading the full code, we can present the draft code. At that point, the code may have some tweak, but if it would be substantially completed and ready for review by the village board. Also, please note, I will be out of the country February, end of it's third or fourth week of February. So we could ideally have the draft completed by mid-February, put it to public review while I'm away, and then the workshop in early March. Thank Chris. That's what I got from Chris late this afternoon.
Clarify that for a second, Matt. So we'll have a full draft, phase 1 and 2 for us this year. We'll review it. Get comments back to them mid to late January. They'll refine the draft by February. And you said something about having the draft and then the final version at the same time. So we'd have the draft out for public review in the workshop while.
Well, it sounds like he wants to finalize the draft after the
workshop.
comments. Yeah.
Okay.
He said, we'll get the draft comments out for review, but then we can finalize it after that.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's
I
kind of what had,
misheard.
like, it wasn't very, like, it wasn't a little funky in the email, but yeah, that's the things that,
That makes sense. I just misheard it.
or I probably misread it. State in the day. Yeah, that's what I gather. Yeah, so there's the update on credit. Let's see, what else we have? Oh, yeah, so thank you, Marilyn, for providing those dates for the room. So I went ahead and added them to the calendar and then online the link that we keep all our meetings, and that email out, so everybody should have that link of the meeting scheduled. And then let's see, talked about the date for the, oh, that's, all right, so the next topic here is area
Can
and,
we just ask a question then, if he wants to have a workshop, sounds like sometime in March. Are we looking at March 20th?
we're not looking at any dates right now.
Why is that?
We need to spend the rest of the time on the area and bulk conversation. We'll get to that later.
Well, the issue is, if someone books any of these dates on this room, we're out of luck in terms of a public workshop, and we have to do that. We have to at least have a discussion.
Okay.
Because just because we have a reservation for the whole room doesn't mean it's going to be the whole room. If Extension gets a 4H
Oh, okay.
request or a unit of government, they take the rest of the room.
That makes sense. All right. So
So
we'll talk about that later. Good to know though. Thank you, Marilyn. Area and bulk conversation. So where do we want to start with this bad boy? Now I hear we may have more than one session to talk about this. That said, I think future agendas may be dictated by Chris's progress, that we may have to pivot on some of these topics to address some of the items that Chris is going to bring up in subsequent drafts. So we have to be mindful of that. That said, area and bulk, where does the conversation want to start among us?
Well, we looked at this, right?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Do we, I mean, I've got some information. I did some research on CBD R1 and R2 that I can share after, so I don't know if we want to go over this first or talk about the information that
That's I am unprepared because I didn't know what we were talking about, so. How about you did, because we did that. We did that.
If you go.
all right, well, we can do this. Since there's been a lot of discussion about
Oh, look at you. Wow, what do we have here?
stuff there, my friend. One of these.
This, one. Right here.
Right.
We'll start with the one that's CBD up in the upper left-hand corner, so.
Big river. Oh, yeah. I don't know that we got the B, but we definitely looked at part one. Right, but I don't know when it goes to part two.
What, for the uses?
They're involved.
Yeah, area and both. And we talked about some, we didn't get to talk about all.
So this was a breakout session, is that
It was, but it was very limited, probably
Right.
one section.
just the two of you? Not
No,
anyone else?
no.
Are you on?
I think I missed the area until perspective.
One, and I think Dave was here because he gave.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll preface this by saying this information that I have here is only based on the town of Milton portion of the village. Because the town of Ballston side's database does not have zoning in it. So this is everything I found or all of my evaluation was just based on, and this is just rough. Down and dirty numbers. So and I know that the central business district, we've had discussions outside of here with zoning and stuff because the minimum lot frontage in a central business district is 50 feet. If you look at the, my numbers up at the left, 174 parcels, out of 174 parcels, 51% are less than the 50%. So we're already much less
Or
than,
you're not.
we're already less than the 50% right off the rep in the central business district. So I really think that that needs to be looked at. If you go down a little bit to Milton Avenue, I broke out Milton Avenue and Front Street, both, and then I combined them at the bottom. So on Milton Avenue, 53% of the parcels are less than 50 feet. And on Front Street, 56% of the parcels are less than 50 feet. So then at the bottom, I combined those. So 56% of everything on Milton Avenue and Front Street in the central business district is less than 50 feet.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How did that happen?
I don't know where I don't know where these numbers would ever have come from.
Okay, so these were never either guidelines? Is this how that, or there were exception or granted variances, or how did?
I mean, those parcels on Front Street and on Milton Avenue have been there for 100 years, so I have no idea.
So they made
all
these numbers.
Oh,
as well.
Yes.
I see.
So I don't know where,
And roads, for that matter, the roads are not the same as sidewalks at that time.
well, but when this was written,
Well,
they
that,
were.
yes, but not,
So
Time
I
of
don't
the
know where
building.
50 feet came from, but it
Okay.
makes absolutely no sense. I mean, and included in some of this information is, the churches that have 100 feet of frontage, or St. Mary's that has 200 feet of frontage or whatever, so.
I have 100.
And you have 100, so that's all, factored into this, but I think that definitely needs to be looked at. So whether we change that minimum lot width to 25 feet in the central business district, that makes a lot of sense to me.
But Anna, let me ask the question, why should anybody care about that? We're dealing with a central business district that's already intact.
Because we can't
What-
build anything in there. There's a vacant lot sitting down there between between, I don't know, what's that
Oh, the
on Milton
condos.
Avenue
Yeah.
that they can't build on because they'd have to get a variance for. So why would we continue to make people in the central business district get a variance if they want to build? When almost every property, more than half of the properties are only 25 feet to begin with,
What?
or less than 50 feet.
They're wondering why 50 feet?
Right,
Yeah.
that's really the question.
Right.
Why should anybody care about that? There is a procedure.
I
to
care.
get- Well, there is a procedure.
Because I'm the zoning board chair, that's why.
But
So what does it cost for you?
I mean, it can change. Someone 10 years from now could get a variance. I mean, the process is intact. And the landscape is what it is. Why should anybody care about that? What's gonna make the difference in an additional 25 feet?
Does that mean you always have to get a variance because of that number? Is that
Yeah.
why? Is that the only reason it's a procedural thing?
Right,
Another
exactly.
hoop to jump through, a necessary hoop is what you're
Right,
saying.
right. We're making,
This group could recommend those parcels grandfathered in. And that it's not, and actually designate those parcels as ones that don't need a variance, because we know that
Why-
it exists and someone creative builder could build.
why would we make,
That hoop of having a variance in there, though.
No, I'm saying you wouldn't have to get a variance.
No, you would.
Because
Any
they
new
would be
parcel going forward.
grandfathered, and
why would
just
we,
as an example, reduce your workload for a future ZBA.
why would we go through the trouble of going through each parcel and saying these 45 parcels are grandfathered in while these need 50 feet? That just makes no sense at all.
It's a small village. It's not a large area. Anything that's new, new development in a larger lot is not gonna matter. They're already gonna have that ability to do that. but there's probably a limited number of parcels that fall into the cracks here. I mean, you didn't show.
6%.
You just
Yeah.
showed us numbers.
Not,
There's
not
over
a,
more
not
than
a
half
small
of them
percent.
Fall into it,
Yeah.
and the bigger problem is, God forbid, okay, Front Street caught fire. Because if it
Or
did,
Milton Avenue.
or Milton Avenue, every one of those properties that's on a substandard lot, okay, couldn't be rebuilt. They'd have to get a variance.
That's gonna reach you 50 feet in your head too, so is Ryan, is that 50?
That's more than 50.
Are you guys 25 then, Darvin? Do you
They're
know?
probably
I would say
25.
just about 25, yeah.
About 25, so I mean, that's a good chunk of.
It's a
retail or
large
buildings.
chunk, especially right down the Milton Avenue where,
Yeah, and
You know.
down past the village hall, that's all less than 50 feet. And
Yeah, yeah.
again, it just seems rational to, look at 56% of the property. Thank you, Anna, for these numbers, by the way. Uh, It seems pretty straightforward, just reduce it to 25, because these numbers, I'm convinced, are arbitrary. I don't know where they came
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
from, and neither does anybody else.
Is
So
there
keeping-
a reason why you'd be worried about decreasing the regulation? of
Well, that's a good
25?
question.
well, right now, no one can explain the rationality of why 50 feet. Is there an actual issue with where that number comes from? And we, as a advisory group, just don't know that. But for right now, 50 feet is a pretty good chunk. And, you know, the charm of the village is the small business emphasis, not the larger, you know, big box retailer. So there's a
Big box
lot of
retailers could have pulled up
opportunity.
50 feet.
There's a lot of, excuse me, there's a lot of opportunity in small, you know, businesses on Front Street when you don't have to meet that 50 feet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's what we're saying.
what I'm thinking.
That's what we're saying.
that's exactly what we're saying.
It should be 25.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation. That's,
Unless.
I just plugged and chugged the numbers,
Yeah.
so that's,
This is a reason why, like, none of us have any sense of why it would have.
Right.
been 50.
and probably anybody that wrote this is dead.
To do it that way.
We're not
I think
sure
it makes sense.
now,
So
maybe.
I can pose that question to Chris to say if there's any other reason not to move it to 25.
That would be a good thing.
Okay.
Um, uh, Chris, if there's a compelling reason not to move.
And so by the same stance, I did the area on each of those as well. Okay, so on Milton Avenue, this is not as big of a number, but 35% have less than the 5,000 square foot minimum. On Front Street, that's bigger, 62% have less than the 5,000 square foot minimum. So combined, we've got about 42% on just on those two streets that have less than the 5,000 square minimum. So whether that would be changed or not, that's probably another question for Chris, but it seems like if we're changing the frontage, maybe the area should also be adjusted accordingly, maybe to 3,500. I mean, I don't know. I can do some more number crunching
To see what the average or see if it's not 5,000, then
and what.
yeah.
Of course, then you've got, you do have like the churches in there, so they're,
They're outliers.
They're-
To Maryland's point, though, if we want to reserve charm and the character of small businesses, we should actually see the footprint of what a small business in Century or Central Business District currently is.
Mhm,
Because we want to preserve that kind of character.
right.
I also wonder, is there a need for a minimum frontage within the central business district?
Square footage or acreage.
Frontage or ish?
That's
More here, yeah, I mean.
Well, there is, right now it's 50 feet.
No,
Well, I
but
mean-
is there a need for one at all?
No, well, you could argue that.
Well, yeah, I wonder again what Chris's take on that is.
Yes.
Especially in a village like ours where.
Probably he wouldn't know because he's not been in the state, but
No,
what's the
65, so
relationship to the
Reality
New York
is
State
that
Business
that's all
Code?
building and stuff like
You
that,
know, is there a number that we're not aware of?
1800.
This is somehow related to,
Mhm.
that's,
So if we, that dropped to. That's a, yeah, I would think 2,500 would be a realistic number there.
I agree with that, 25 is pretty close to it.
Right?
Yeah.
You took into.
For lot size, you mean?
No, for the, yeah, for the lot size.
Lot size area, yeah. Trying to remember where we were before we moved. to
Well,
32
what you're
Front
doing,
Street.
Pete, is you're making it easier to, if something were to happen to any of those buildings, to rebuild them without having to go through all the
Sure,
zoning.
that makes sense.
So there's where we were before we moved to 30 Front Street, we were at 78 Front Street. And that, I want to say the width of that was 20 feet.
Hmm.
It's
Where,
still-
where is that down there?
That's up in Front Street, so it's on the outside of that.
Yes, okay,
It's a very narrow,
like we're Swedish.
yeah.
Swedish.
two doors from Sweden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are very
Yeah,
narrow.
and that's when a situation where something were to happen to that space,
Mhm.
you know, we're stuck with it because it's less than 50
Right,
feet.
you'd be doomed.
not necessarily.
Well, based
I don't-
on
I don't-
this,
yeah.
You have to go through various steps.
Yeah, and I think the whole point is, why have a variance if that's not even reality? You have to have a variance to align with reality. It should be the
Right,
other way around.
Right, exactly.
So that's what a variance.
We need to be able to encourage small
To
business.
the rule, not, yeah.
Um,
Okay, so I hear minimum lot size to 2,500. Ask Chris if there's a need to have minimum frontage or acreage in a CBD. If there's a rationale to have one.
and then right, that's good. And then we went on, like Rory and I had a conversation before about the maximum building coverage. This is 100, so I don't know, do we have,
Maximum building coverage. is it
like
the-
some buildings,
You have zero lot line all the way around.
yeah, sure, like here's your lot and here's your building.
Oh, so it's the
like there's-
ratio of open space.
It's
to
100%.
building.
There is no open
coverage.
space in the central business
Central
district.
business.
Right.
I don't-
That's maximum though, right? So you could. Have a
You
building.
could have less, okay,
Right.
but it essentially says, let's use the fenced in lot on Route 50 that has all of the monuments and crap in it, okay? That would have zero lot line if it were built.
Right. Or take up on it.
It would take up pretty much all of it.
That's right, and I missed that. There's, do away with the 100%?
We don't know,
Oh.
is 100% good,
No.
maximum is 100%, is that good or is that bad?
oh, it's, yeah, the statuary place, the garden place.
I don't know, that's just for conversation, I guess. Like if you look at Rory's place, his place is in the central business district. Basically, you could fill his entire lot.
Yeah.
With building. Is that something we would want to see? Probably not.
That's interesting. The disparity in lot size is very interesting.
Well, that's point, okay? I would argue that we should ask the consultant
Yeah,
to take a look at the entire CBD language and the area involved, because I think in many cases, the CBD is very restrictive. If we get into uses, I'll point it out in several regards. I think that whoever drafted this, I don't know who did it or how they came up with it. I don't think it was well thought out. Okay, for example, if we take Milton Avenue towards the north end where the garages in my building and some of those other spaces. Thompson Street, okay, is in the central business district, but it's a mixture of lawyers, residential, now a police department. Okay, Legends is on the corner, even though its address is Bath Street, the parking space and everything is on Thompson. You gotta look at all of that and go, well, what would happen if somebody wanted to build something commercial there or turn one of those buildings into a commercial space or a business? It's all residential, but CBD says you can't have residential in the CBD district, and yet we've got a ton of it. No R1 residences are allowed in a CBD, and yet they're all over the place. And again, that's where the complexity of all of this comes in. If somebody wants to do something, and CBD is one example, but it could apply anywhere. Do you agree, Anna?
well, that's where we go back to, I think. The original consultant that did the zoning map just went in and grabbed tax parcels. So anything that had frontage on Milton Avenue, even if it had frontage on Thompson Street, they grabbed that parcel and it all shows up. Instead of it being 50 feet off parallel off of Route 50, which is what I would think is as a central business district. For instance, Ron Murphy a few years ago he has a carriage house over on Thompson Street. Now, just because that's attached to the front piece, he had to come for a variance to put a couple of, or apartment or a couple of
Yeah, but-
apartments in. Well, who's gonna put a business over on Thompson Street, really? It's not a central business district area. It's not in the central line of the village, so. Exactly. So,
The factory is essentially on the street.
right,
Well, again, there you are. It all gets,
so that would need to be looked
depending
at
upon where
too.
you
when
are.
we set
it
that
becomes
line
more
up.
challenging.
And
I'll
it also
use,
depends on the lines of the CBD.
Right,
Right.
Chestnut
that's what I
Avenue,
was gonna say, some of this.
Ford Street, or Mechanic Street, or Ford and Mechanic and Thompson.
Right, because the Baptist church is one parcel, so that looks like that's all central business district,
Right.
so.
It's not.
It's not.
It's a parking lot.
Right.
All right, so help me. What are we going to ask Chris on this?
I would
project?
ask him to take a look at the CBD language in our code existing and the area in bulk. And give us some options in terms of other similar villages, in terms of what they might call that district or how they would define it.
Yeah, I think, I like that, Rory, I think it would also be helpful for sentence.
Oh, we're gonna send him, yeah, we're definitely gonna send him Anna's work.
No, but it's pretty eye opening to see that more than half of the central business district. A lot
Not a
are-
code.
But it's not surprising.
It's not necessarily surprising, but it's definitely something.
It's an older village and they made use with the architecture that they had. And people subdivided, indiscriminately, so. The way it goes.
And it says here, this was amended on July 24th, 2000,
Mhm.
by LL.
Local law.
Local law 1 of 2000.
So that's the last
They
thing
get
that we
both.
looked at that.
Oh, there.
All right, what else you got here?
So if you just go over to the next sheet, we can start with the R1. Minimum frontage is 80 feet in R1, which is great for Colonial Hills. But inside our village, inside downtown part of the village. Again, 47% are less than 80 feet. 53% are more than 80 feet. And then I even broke it down into the 1-family, 2-family, 3-family / apartments. So 76% are less of the 1-families are less than 80 feet, which I know my house is like 75 feet. 2-families is 11 and 3-families are 3. So I don't know whether the 80 feet is something we would want to look at.
Again, what was the rationale for that particular dimension?
Right.
Does
'Cause
anybody know the history on that?
nobody knows the history on any of this.
Okay,
I know my lots where I am, 1900, our lots are all 50 feet, 250 feet. back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah,
that's a
standard.
lot,
Yeah.
right? So why they would
That's all
make
they
up
want.
something that's 80 feet, I don't know.
because I couldn't rebuild that 50 feet, I'd have to go back.
I think we're 50 feet on Chapman Street. I think we're less than 50. Sure you are. Yeah, sure. So we're probably more like 30 there.
Yeah,
Um,
just weird, because my whole street's 50.
yeah. But it's definitely more frontage on your street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Except for the corners. And they were afterthoughts.
So basically, I think we just need to look at that. Do we want to keep that 80 feet? Don't we want to keep, I mean, what's left to build? There's not a lot of space left to build, but 80 feet, if somebody did want to split their lot, we've had a lot of that lately up on West Street, I think it was, and maybe on Division.
You're gonna have
Paragraph.
We've had a lot of people that want, 80 feet's too much.
You're gonna have a couple more because people came ask Don about. They want to.
Okay. So I think that one should be split. And then I gave, the acreage stuff, the acreage dimensions the same, there wasn't as high, but 34% are less than the 10,000 square foot. And then I broke it down into 210s and 220s. 210s, more of them. There's more to, 210 is a single family residence, 220 is a double family or a double occupancy. The other issue with the R1s, I think, is the front yards, especially the side yard and the rear yard. We get a lot of variances or a lot of variance requests for side yard and rear yard. And 25 feet front yard, I don't know, our porch is right on the sidewalk. I mean, I don't think anybody, how are you guys on Chapman Street? You're all pretty close.
Close.
15 feet, maybe?
15 feet, yeah, maybe 20, 15. Yeah, they're our approach right now.
So the only ones that actually are to this code might be your development, Pete, Colonial Hills, Kayleen Drive, those new developments. The rest of them, nothing.
So I think we should make, oh, you're right.
Side yard, I don't know, 6 feet, 8 feet, maybe. Rear yard, 25 feet is a lot.
Teeny
Well, I
tiny
re-
lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's small. If you gotta put 25 feet in the front, 25 feet in the back,
Yeah,
you may have room on your 150-foot parcel, but the people that have 75-foot parcels.
yeah, and I would be right on top of my actual work.
When we, just to give you an example, if you want to drive through it, okay, when we built the village in Saratoga 20 some years ago, those houses were 40 and 50-foot lots, okay, with 5-foot side yard setbacks, so 10 feet apart. And, so
That's
now the message is, we're told that would never work, no one in their right mind would want to live there.
Which is small.
You'd be amazed, okay, it's the most successful subdivision in the city. And people never complain one bit about being 5 feet away. Okay, and if you go to Schenectady, you'll find a lot of that. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just simply saying that these distances are not necessarily realistic.
Yeah.
Okay, and if we're looking for infill and people to do what's being done in Saratoga now, where literally, well, no, in terms of residents, okay, people are able to take parcels and subdivide them because it's only 60 feet frontage in Saratoga, 6,000 square foot lots.
Ah,
And
good
then they
to know.
can put houses right on, they can build something. And with the demand that we have for housing and the costs, if somebody could subdivide off a lot, it might send their kid to college and not hurt the village at all. Add another taxable unit to the village and another family. So I don't think these are necessarily realistic. I never have understood them. And I've never understood why they'd wanted to, why if you have an 80-foot front, okay, you need a 10,000 square foot lot. Okay, that means that it's got to be 150 feet, 125 feet deep. Find me a few of those. Okay, there just aren't that many.
I don't know. But not by much though.
Well,
My
but
side
you
yard-
understand
my
the point.
side yard are-
Yeah, and again, because our village is so mixed in terms of the way the neighborhoods are configured and the streets, it just seems to me that this doesn't represent what the village is. And we could make it such that it could represent what the village is, and that way the village would stay the way it is.
So let me ask you a question based on your analysis. Is the goal of recommending new sizes to align to reality? To not have variance for the rule? Or is there some other rationale for adjusting these?
Well, I would say that and to encourage more development if we can have it. I mean, like I said, we've had 2 or 3 in the last couple of years where they've had a pretty good sized lot and they just wanted to split it and, their kid wanted, well, right down there on, the end of Bath Street, where they just cut that big tree down that they argued they weren't gonna cut that tree down. They came in front of us and wanted to split things up. And then there was the one up on, Division Seat, Dan Fleming, I think his name was.
Yes,
Fleming, right? That guy,
nice guy.
great guy.
Dentist,
Bill
right?
Fleming, last name?
Dentist?
Yeah,
On
no,
Division Street?
was it Division? Maybe
think
what, I don't
the
know.
name of
He's
the
had
street.
he's had a Glen Street, maybe. He's had a couple of them where he had a pretty good sized lot, but he didn't have 160 feet. So he wanted to split it up so that he could build 2 houses and he was gonna live in one and I think his kid was gonna live in one. So we've added another family to the village. We've added more tax base to the village. I mean, to me, it's a win-win.
So did Christopher get back with the explanations between a condo and a townhouse?
I don't recall seeing anything.
Okay, because we were asked for definitions, because by what you're saying is it would, we're essentially also making a variance for a townhouse or even condos in those areas, because they're that close together and they would take up that much room. But,
Right, the use would matter
correct,
when we adjust these numbers.
because that would be the same as having 5 feet between houses.
Mhm.
I just didn't know.
Condos typically, though, from my experience, are more apartment type things, not houses. They can be, they are in Malta, there's houses
Right.
that are condos.
I
But,
remember you saying we only get 60%.
right,
So,
like the factory, they could put condos in the factory,
Right.
probably easily. Rory could probably put condos in his place. There are a few places that would be able to put them in, but, so I think it's both, Matt. I
And
mean,
to
it's
answer,
both.
to
It's-
answer your question, a
That makes sense to me.
condominium, all right, is a building that essentially you own the interior space.
right, and somebody else takes care of the outside. It's
And you
somebody else's
pay, and you
thing.
have an association of some type under
Yeah,
legal
like an HOA.
definition. Right. Okay, but a townhouse can be a condo. Okay.
It could be.
Right, but Chris was going to break us down. We were going to ask him, or we asked him that for that definition because of the tax purposes.
Right.
But there's
because of what
that.
You brought up
That's
last
exact-
meeting.
I'm sure it'll be in the boilerplate definitions when we get the next iteration.
Because that's, it was just a conversation, and if
Mhm.
that would change the use too, so build a condo instead of a house.
All right, so I heard so far for R1, we're recommending changing the width to 50 feet to align to a standard lot versus 80.
Wouldn't bother me any.
Well, I'd also like to repeat the question I asked before, and that is whether or not the numbers that are here have any relationship to the New York State Building Code. And if we can do that also, record that as a concern.
Concern, like, so I'll
In
ask
other words,
Chris,
we're changing numbers here. We don't know what the rationale for the original numbers were based on
Wasn't built in New
something
York
here
State.
that was 20+ years old. Is there anything in the state building code that defines or makes a minimum requirement for a number? So you're
I don't
saying
believe
no
so.
definitively.
I'm saying
Municipality wise does it, but not at the state level.
right. I'm not saying no definitively, but I'd probably
Okay,
bet a couple
yeah.
paychecks on it.
Yeah, if we can ask Chris to check that out.
We can check
as
county
part of,
planning. I'll
you know,
talk to Jason in county planning.
For our
One of-
consultant.
What Anna did here is helpful to get a sense of like how out of compliance we are, but do we need more to understand what that maximum really, or minimum rather, looks like in reality, like some number of 80% of buildings, lots within R1 are more than 40 feet of frontage, so 40 feet is like a good standard to say. I'm just trying to think of if we say rather than 80 feet for R1 frontage, say 50 feet. I want to have data that says this is the reality for the majority of lots, so we're not just switching out one number for a new number with the same
Yep.
lot, you know?
so what I'm
I can
hearing
look at
is,
that.
No, that's a good point.
And I could look at-
You can plug in 40 and still, you might hit 90% of the properties. So you'd be at 40 and you'd be at 65 or something.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not that much improvement.
So I feel like we want to like, how many lots do we want to be informing?
what's the threshold?
Exactly.
Okay.
If it's 80% of them, then where is that number?
Otherwise, we're just repeating
Exactly.
the mistakes of the past.
Well,
Throwing in a number because one person said it's great and this is what's gonna happen, and not knowing the basis, the rationale, or the science behind that, so.
well, if you look up on that top of that sheet, we
Yeah.
have 158 are 13% are 50 feet in R1s. That's what I came up with. And then 53% or 80 or more, although those do include those the big properties that are in R1, the churches, the parking lots, you know, I mean, I could filter some of those out. I didn't really do a lot of that, just the ones that just popped out at me, I got rid of.
All right, so for next steps, Anna, you're gonna do some
I'll do a little more digging.
more refinement on, due diligence to help Zach drive and informed minimum lot width or neither.
Then if you go down to the next R2, it's a minimum lot width of 100, and then we have 15,000 plus 25. My analysis is up on the next sheet. 82% are less than 100%, 100 feet. So we're way out of whack there. Which I'm in R2, so I do not have 100 feet. I have 75, 77.
Where are you? What sheet?
If you look
Oh, I
at,
see it. Right here. Top of it. so
yeah,
it's-
but yeah, and then the other stuff is on the other sheet though. So I think that frontage also needs to be looked at, and then the same with the area.
So 81%.
82% are less than 100 feet in R2.
Sorry, what, which page is it?
If you look at,
Oh,
yeah, but then my information is on the top of the first page. That will be, it says.
Oh, I see it.
82% are. in
Less than 100
excess-
feet.
Oh, less than 100. Okay.
What's that number below that?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I did wrote something and then I crossed it out, and I guess I didn't cross it out good enough or erased it. And then the same with the area, if you look over to the right. 91 out of 113 of our total are less than the 15,000, so that's 81%. And then I broke that down into the 1 family, 2 family, and 3 family or more. I didn't do the percentages, but 58 out of 113, so that's about half of the 1 families are less than the area.
15,000 square feet?
Yep.
All right, so next steps also, are you going to do more number crunching on this to? 'Cause that's a lot, that sounds like a lot of work.
Is it possible to like export something?
Oh, yeah, I did. That's what I did. And then I sorted it. I sorted it all by frontages, and I sorted it by area, and I sorted it.
I was thinking we could, we don't need to give.
Use
those
that
to you,
thing
but I'm
now,
saying
but I can sort. Well, I'm
if
sorry, Jared.
You imported files, we can active, each of us pick one of the districts or.
Pivot table, the heck out. That's what I was thinking.
Okay,
You sent it to us, it was blast through it.
okay. And like I said, all this 1 family, 2 family stuff is all just town of Milton, nothing in town of Ballston. So that's all I got.
Want to provide,
You said the reason it's not available in the town of Ballston is.
They don't have their zoning listed in their database.
See, I looked in there on their homepage, and I looked also at their zoning and their comprehensive plan and the whole thing.
Yeah, but is it split down by section, block and lot? See, I pulled their tax database.
Oh, I just looked at their website and went through their zoning information.
Right, so there's no, how do you sort that?
I was just looking to
Right,
see.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, it's there, but it's not in their assessor's file. It's not in
Okay.
their file.
I didn't look there. I just looked at their.
all right, so I don't have, okay, all right. So Anna, you're gonna provide those Excel exports. so we
I can
find
do
the
that,
numbers.
sure can.
We can do that for R1 and R2?
We can do R1, R2, and CBD if you would like.
That would be amazing.
Each assessor does their own gig. You just have to be aware when you're looking through it, there's always some oddities in there. You know, when you see that database, there's always gonna be some, like I have a note over here, less school water supply. Cause there were a whole bunch of those, like the village water tower and that kind of stuff. I took those out before I did some of this analysis, but you guys can do your own gig. And
So
Yeah, it's
in
like
order
that.
to do that, you have to cross-reference whatever the tax ID is against the address, basically, or is that all included in the extra?
there's a description.
Oh, even better. Even better.
Easy peasy.
Even better.
It's like that issue I brought to your attention. They
Mhm.
don't designate the historic district parcels in the town of Ballston.
Right.
That's a gap.
What else in area in bulk?
Unless we go through, what do we want to do with the Schedule As?
So it sounds like next time, if we get these, of course, we can come with recommendations on lot widths and lot sizes and building coverages and things like that. Okay.
I think now we just need to definitely look at the data and see where it lands. And go from there.
Agree on a number based on most of them, where's the threshold?
Well, where does Chris come into all of this? I kind of feel like we're doing some extra work here that maybe he's already, accomplished an initial draft.
Oh, we can ask that question. That's easy enough.
Yeah. We've got 14 minutes up. Do we want to talk anything on Schedule A?
I think we go through it fairly quickly. I mean, if we just want to focus on one or two of the districts, R1, R2, or Central Business District. Because John and Margaret and I looked at it once already, so.
This February, this home occupation,
Schedule A, Part 1.
with one family dwelling.
Yes, that's it.
The wind.
Are we doing part 1
There's a part one
and a part 2, right?
Yep.
We were talking about a home occupation last week. Now they're saying use a special permit for R1 and R2. We wanted to not do that. Right.
Not have a special permit.
This R1.
Right.
So you gotta make sure we convey that to Chris.
Oh, we changed it.
Part 2, the first one.
We do not. We want permitted use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we just want to start at the top and run down the, like, R1 real quickly? If they have a cemetery as a special permit in R1.
I'm not doing this on purpose.
Yes, you are.
Come on, Jared.
You're trying to screw the whole thing up here.
Yeah, I like the idea of stepping through the whole thing, top to bottom. So for home occupation, what's our recommendation?
Well, that's part 2.
I'm sorry, am I jumping ahead?
Yeah.
One family dwelling.
All right, one family dwelling. Oh, shoot.
So for R1, it makes sense to me, except where you get to cemetery. I don't think a cemetery, I think that should be a prohibited in an R1.
Is that because of where our cemetery is located now?
Well, pre-existing non-conforming is different. I mean, I don't. To me, this would be only if somebody's coming forward to you and saying, Margaret, I want to tear down your house, and put a cemetery in there.
Gee, guys, it's not.
So Diana, get in there, Margaret.
I think that if we could look at the fact that a two-family dwelling is not allowed in R1, nor is a multifamily
agree.
And then I went down and, the other one that I think is interesting is, let's see. Special use permit for a nursery school in an R1.
Well, that would be kind of a home occupation almost. It depends.
Nursery school is like
Well, it wouldn't, it wouldn't.
daycare.
That would-
Yeah,
That would kind of be conflict.
Those are the reasons I'm bringing it up, okay, and then lastly, or the one thing that does bother me, okay, is the second to the last says dwelling apartment over business office in an R1 is not permitted. But we have business offices in R1s, and why wouldn't an apartment be allowed above it as opposed to over it?
No, you just said the same thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
No, a dwelling
You mean
apartment.
with it, you mean on the same
with it,
floor with
right,
it, not above it.
Right, why wouldn't that be allowed? I mean, there's a perfect example of that, Ron Murphy's building next door to mine, the old, tractor building. That has a retail in the front and it has an apartment in the back. And it's not above it, it's with it.
But isn't that CBD?
That is CBD, okay, but
So, yeah,
again,
that one.
Yeah.
I just don't think over makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense. I think it could be with.
so you're not advocating for changing that X to a P, you're changing the use
From
from over to,
to with.
Yeah,
okay. Dwelling apartments over business with office to dwelling apartments with business office, okay.
We're gonna hop up a little bit on there. We have public parks or playground allowed in the R1 by special permit. It seems a little odd to me.
So the recommendation is to do what?
I would have it not allowed. The same with the cemetery, not allowed, not allowed.
yeah, there's an enormous public park right in the middle of R1 on Hyde Boulevard.
I understand that, but just because it's there doesn't mean that somebody else could build. That's we just said about the cemetery.
Yeah.
We don't want it. You gotta let go of pre-existing on this.
Okay,
But at the same time, doesn't. I think when we talk about this with like. The route map from the comp plan. We were talking about, should there be like a separate district for
Right,
parks?
open space.
But I thought Chris's perspective on it was,
Use,
right.
Right,
The
right.
different uses
Yeah.
permitted.
that's right.
Right,
But if we don't permit them within the R1, what do we?
It looks like they're just permits
okay.
over there permitted in R2 and CBD. Special permit only in R1.
So are you saying, okay, so that's for just R1, right? Not R2. Yeah.
Right,
in R2 they're permitted.
And CBD, they're permitted.
Although I don't know why you want to take around in the CBD, but okay.
exactly.
Well, again, that's where you still
Public parks or playgrounds, it's synonymous.
see incongruity or
But
reverse.
it's weird. Yes, yeah, there's gonna be a pavilion and small children's climbing, recreation, structures.
When I think of was a playground,
Yeah.
Malta Avenue School, on East
Kelly
Ave,
Park.
those are,
Jungle gym.
Yeah, that's a great example of a public park in R1 area. Am I wrong? Malta Avenue School.
Right.
That is a public playground for all intents and purposes, after school hours and on the weekends. I don't have a problem with it. It's not really impacting anybody unless.
Well, new ones, you think new ones.
Right, that's all.
Not current ones, new ones, if we want new ones of those in our ones. Right, is that where we're?
That's what I think.
Not
Yeah, I
pre-
mean, you can't,
not conforming or non-conforming.
99% of the village is pre-existing non-conforming in one way or another.
So if a subdivision like Helene Drive decided to use or create a pocket park in that R1 area, they would be prohibited from doing so on a parcel that might be available. And everybody here would not be happy with that? Or would they be happy?
So we leave
Would
it
that
as
be part of
special
the-
permit.
I
Or that'd be
that
part
would
of a
be-
Special.
Yeah. or
Right, so
something else.
we leave it as special use.
Okay.
What, Anna, could you talk a little bit about why you don't think we should have them permitted in R1? Just blanket permit? Not-
Well, just basically because, you know, I mean, you don't want, so 3 houses fall down in R1 and all of a sudden we get a cemetery there. They come in front of the board, I mean, they could come in front of the zoning board and ask for a special use permit because now they want to put a cemetery in the middle of the village. Seems a little odd to me.
Well, a cemetery, I agree.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
More of like
A park.
maintenance.
No, yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't thinking of like the Clay, and now I'm thinking like Colonial Hills, maybe if they wanted
Exactly.
to.
Yeah. And I have a question about your definition of cemetery. Because that has
It's where you put
changed.
dead people.
Okay, so a cemetery could also be a columbarium, correct?
I don't want those in R1 either.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, I'm just.
I don't even know what it is and I don't want them there.
It's,
Mausoleum?
it's
I like that.
basically a storage facility or cremated remains. So,
There's in the columbarium at Arlington,
Mhm.
and they're just like rows.
Right.
With little name bricks on it.
Solomon
Yeah.
Cemetery.
A consolidated cemetery.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's all in how you define what you're talking about. And, you know, so.
Still don't see the logic of having one.
No, I don't either.
Well, we have a funeral home in an R1 zone, right? And that. funeral
Special
home
use permit.
Just actually purchased the property next door. So it could possibly be part of this plan.
But
Well, you need a special use permit though, right? So what's,
But currently now that would happen, yeah, that's, part of what they planned on doing. I'm just saying, it's all how we define all of these various uses, or how Chris will help us define that.
3 minutes.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion? There's a form, I made a spreadsheet and put it on our shared space way back when we were doing breakout groups. It's called Schedule A Annotate. And I created a line item for everything that's on Schedule A for existing and then for proposed. And I think we'd benefit from, as a group, putting this up on the screen and walking through it and saying line by line, do we think one family dwellings should be permitted in R1, R2, CBD? Yes, no.
Yep, that's a good idea.
So maybe that's an agenda item for us.
Great way to start next meeting.
Yeah, I like that.
What director is it under?
In supporting documents. And it's Schedule A annotated.
All right, oh, yeah.
Yeah, make it very easy.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, and then we can just send Chris this link saying,
Exactly.
here,
Exactly.
like it.
All right here. So already a bunch of questions in there. I'll check it out for next week.
All right, so, all right, hang on a second, let me just get this next up down. Zach to review home. One behind lawns. Then to Chris.
We'll have a new line to have this development.
Yes,
All right,
landed, that's. the-
so we've got 2 next steps for Zach.
Residential.
So Anna's going to go ahead and do some exports, so we can go crunch some numbers on our CBD, R1, R2, and Excel. We can put it on Excel. We come back and determine a threshold of what minimum lot size, acreage should be based on actual real-time data. And then the next one here is send this link out too in our next steps. That Schedule A annotated, put up on the screen and step through that. And so we'll use that to go line by line through each one. Then we can hand it out to Chris based on our recommendations. Sounds like a good agenda topics for next time. Oh, right. We good? Any public comment?
Well, before we go to public comment, we really need to make a decision about a next public workshop. And just because I don't want to be shut out, of the dates that we already have reserved, we have no guarantee we have the whole auditorium.
No.
So
problem.
I'm gonna recommend March 20th, if that meets with his schedule. And if so, I'll make sure that extension books the whole room, so we have the space.
Can we make that tentative though? Because we really need to finish up what we're doing. That's the most important thing. We've
Well,
been
either
dragging
decide,
our feet.
no, I'm not dragging our feet. I think this is a healthy discussion. I think either decide it's gonna be in March or early April, not late April.
I think
and then
April's
the
up to-
other
I
date
think
is
April's up to
April
the
3rd.
topic. Yeah, I think April's up to topic. I think there's a strong desire to have everything to the board of trustees by April. So we've got until then to play around. So, March 20th. I don't see an issue with penciling that in for now.
Chris needs to be the one to finally comment that he's available.
Well, clearly, but let's pencil it in. I can just ask him. That's all simple as it takes.
Okay. Yeah, as soon as I hear back from you, next week, we'll book it with extension.
Public, okay.
And I'd also like to request that, we get Chris back on the schedule of seeing him once a month.
He'll probably be here. I can ask him to show up when he delivers the phase 2 document. For our next meeting after that. I don't know if it's gonna be January 2nd. Yeah. All right, so I will make a note here. Another next step here. Where's my ask Chris? Ask Chris. There we go. This, 3, 1, 4, again, public workshop.
So every time I see something like,
What exactly is that on?
forgotten about it. There's the one.
Gives everybody to comment on the actual draft itself. And he'll be there to field those questions. All right, anything else before I turn to public comments? Jen, anybody on Zoom by any chance?
Hold on, I'm
don't-
checking. Nope. Oh, Kristen Iacolucci. If she wants to speak, she should raise her hand.
That's me.
Oh, that's you.
Oh.
Raising your hand, that's what I'm doing that comment.
Never mind.
Anybody in the room here want to have a public comment? Yes, Liz.
I think it's really good material. Good to be what's actually here. We're attending a lot of zoning, Board of Appeal meeting. Exactly what Peter said, everybody feeling actual. That's not Judy, are very, they don't know rationale for what's in the code. It sounds to me they are focused on new development. And this is what we want, in new development. I would consider, one thing that I haven't seen you really talk about is the districts and what they are. And I know there's been a suggestion to do a transition district that would be different. I would also recommend that maybe you split out the more traditional suburban areas into different than the historical parts of the village, such as Wood, Fairground Hill, Colonial Hills, because I think those individuals would be probably a lot more variety in the area where I live, more in the town, I think used to be for, apartments, 2-family, 3-family, businesses, etc. But I don't know if folks up in Colonial Hills would feel the same way, or Chelsea would.
you know, and you can talk to that. So just consider maybe creating two types of residential business.
I know that there's a topic out there about breaking up R1s into neighborhoods. There's a too many or too less. So I know that's top of mind. That topic itself is top of mind with Chris.
Yeah. You may not want to, 10 different districts, but I think at least two to distinguish between the types of things.
We'll see what Chris comes back with, because I know that's on his list.
Yeah, I wonder if. Like the area regulations, Chesterwood and Colonial Hill could be on the same page.
Right.
Really, you can just say this is just a different residential district.
Yep. The other thing, I don't know if it falls under your, okay, less time. And that's an issue. You know, that comes up with.
Yeah.
Water.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, everybody. Drive safe. Jen, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jen.
No
You don't
problem,
have to
guys.
drive.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Just so you know, and everyone's on the same page, I am not in the office tomorrow, so I won't post this to YouTube until Monday.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No
Appreciate your time.
problem. Have a nice weekend, guys.
That's just the.
Oh, thank you. No, I was gonna ask you about that. Thank you.